Okay, so before I start with the discussion of the case studies, let me just highlight few things. Now, when we discuss case studies in this batch, the idea that I have in my mind is that we all have some basic idea about the syllabus, the preparation course, the exam pattern, everything, right? And what we are looking here from the batch or from the classes is that how to approach a question. Whenever we face a question, specifically the 2 marks ones, or those a little lengthier questions, how should we approach and zero down to the answer, particularly for our JIB exam that is going to be held on 8th. So now in these case studies, when we discuss these questions, the idea here will be not to just find out the correct answer, but also in few cases how to arrive at the correct answer. So without any delay, let's start with the discussion. Uh, you may feel free to ask any questions if you have in the chat box. But it is my suggestion, if there is an unrelated question, keep it for the end of the class. And if there's something that you do not understand in the question that we are discussing, please, make a immediate interaction in the chat box. So let's start here with our first question. Okay. Now, this is a question which talks about the money, right? The capital that can be raised. How much can be borrowed? So let's read the question. Can board of directors of a public limited company borrow in excess of the aggregate of the paid up capital and its free reserves? So understand 2 marks question. They are all with 2 level of difficulty. One, you need to know whether the answer is yes or no. And second, you will have to know what is the correct reason for this, right? So here in this case, you have all the options, and let's see which one of them is correct. I would request everybody, you know, to at least attempt the question, forget about being right or wrong here, right? Whatever you feel is the correct answer, indicate the same in the chat box. Because if it's a right answer, it will be a reinforcement. And if it's an incorrect answer, you will always remember the reason and the correct answer that you were wrong, right? So let's look into the options here. So yes, after passing a resolution at a duly convened meeting of the board. Yes, after obtaining the consent of the shareholders in the general meeting. No, because it is prohibited under Section 293 of the Companies Act 2013. And yes, because borrowing up to 200% of paid up capital and free reserves is permitted under Section 293 of Companies Act 2013. So what do you think is the correct answer here? So I've got one correct answer from Manish ji. What about others? Quickly. So here this question typically belongs to the first 2 modules where we had discussed about the public and the private limited. And yes, option B is the correct answer here. So one can only borrow in excess, right? After the shareholders' consent is taken from the general meeting. Otherwise, the limit is 100%. So if you look at point number D, if it would have been written 100% here, right, then this would also have been correct. But because it's 200%, it is wrong, right? And here no is the incorrect answer. You cannot. And here first option is wrong because you have to hold a meeting not of the board members but of the shareholders, right? So always try and understand why an answer is correct and why the other answers are wrong. So next question. This is from module B that you have. Again, these two modules are very heavy, relevant, and scoring. They get maximum 2 marks questions from these modules. So let's look at question number 2. A check dated October 12 to 2014 is presented for the payment on October 27, 2014. It is, however, observed that the checkbook from which the check was issued to the customer on October 2022 to 14 only. What would the bank do with the check? So there are 3 dates written here. One is when was the check dated? The other was when was the check presented for payment? And the third one was when was the checkbook issued? Right? So in this case, what should the bank do? So look at, there are these 5 options given to you. This is an ante-dated check and would be paid if otherwise in order. The check would be paid if drawer confirms that he has put the date intentionally. The check would be returned as apparent tenor of the drawer is not clear. Option D, the check being post-dated check would be returned. And option E, the check being ante-dated would be returned. So now here, when we are answering the question, we are, we've come across 2 terms. One is a post-dated check and the other is an ante-dated check. So when you look at a term which is called post-dated check and ante-dated, what is the difference? What is the difference? So if today on 3rd January, right, if I write a check and this check, the date I write on it is at a future date. So if I write a date which says 8th of January, right? So when you write a future date like this, relative to the present, this is known as a post-dated check. And we use post-dated check to in a lot of situations, specifically if you have a locker rent, if you have mortgage loan. So if you write a date which is in future relative to the current date, it is post-dated. Similarly, then what will be an ante-dated check? So an ante-dated check is just the opposite of post-dated. What would this be? Here, if the current date is 3rd of January 2022, I cut this check, I'm giving this check to you. But the date that I write is 3rd of December 2021. So the date which is relatively in the past of the current date, right? So prior to the current date, antedated, future is the post-dated. Is this clear? Right? So when we know these 2 concepts, that what is post-dated and what is antedated, I think now you should be all able to answer this. It will help you, and both the checks are valid, right? What is the tenure of the check being valid? For how many months? You remember? 3 months. Yes, absolutely right. Okay, now this is an antedated check. Now, because this is an antedated check, these are valid checks. Here, the correct answer is option A. Right? It doesn't matter for the bank to clear this check. I hope this is clear. Okay, next we have question 3 on the screen. Again, it is a multi-level question where you need to choose between the various options. So the question reads like this. Section 445ZA to 45ZF of the Banking Regulation Act relates to nomination in. So we all know there is a nomination facility which we need to exercise. The Banking Regulation Act sections are given here, and you need to tell that which are the sections that these six relate to: deposit, safe custody, locker accounts. So your option A says only 1 and 2. That means only deposit and safe custody are there. Then there's option B, which says only 1 and 3. That means only deposit and locker accounts, not a safe custody account. Then option C says only 2 and 3. Right? And then option D, all 1, 2, and 3. Now, when I read this question, I look at it that 1 has to be there. Right? By just logical exposure to the banking sector, one would know that option number 1, which is deposits, will be there. So that means option number C, which is only 2 and 3, is incorrect and will never be valid. Now, the tricky part here will be whether safe custody is included or not. Okay, so I have got quickly all the correct answers here, which is the last option, option D. So, Kumar Gadam ji, I think what you need to focus is more on the confidence side or the reasoning side so that you're sure that what the answer you are saying and it is not just sheer guesswork. So all the answers are correct initially, but then you are confused and you modify your answer. Avoid doing that because I've realized the first answer is your correct answer. With this, we go to the next question, question number 4. Now, this is a little text-based question, right? So read this question carefully and then we'll solve this. Everybody, take 2 minutes to read it. So here it says that a Mumbai branch of ABC Bank receives a check of rupees 10,000 for payment in clearing presented by XYZ Bank. On careful examination, it is observed that this crossed check bears crossing written Indore within two parallel transverse lines. What should the bank do? So this is from the crossing of check basically. And it says if XYZ Bank gives indemnity, the check can be paid. If XYZ Bank confirms that they are receiving the payment on the behalf of their Indore branch, the check can be paid. If Delhi branch appears to be functioning as agent for Indore branch, the check would be paid. Or the check would be returned because Rod's instructions become unclear. Or last is the check would be paid. And that is like an unconditional, nothing. like in the first 2, 3 points. So, what do you think is the correct answer here? So, yes, option E is the correct answer. The check would be paid. It is only when the crossing, the name of the bank would have been written, then it would have been paid only at that bank. But the name of the city does not make any difference in that. So moving forward, we have question number 5, which is, the text in the question is really wrong. So what you need to remember is that even in the case study based questions, actually reading time also is something that you need to factor in. So never spend too much time in the half mark questions and avoid that in the 1 mark question as well. Because 2 marks questions, they need not, you know, take the same time. They rather often take much more time than what you plan. So everybody read it once and then we'll discuss it. So here the question says that ABC Bank, which started functioning in the recent months in a town, opened a savings bank account in the name of Mr. X without any introduction with cash deposit of rupees 1000. So when I say introduction, right, what do we understand by that? So the term introduction is KYC, right? So now we know it as KYC. Earlier we would always have an introducer. So this introducer's basically the role was what? To make sure that the documents that have been submitted to the bank, are authenticated. There is no, you know, poor KYC. So the introducer would know about that person and would introduce the bank to this customer. So that was the purpose of the introduction. Now definitely we do it as KYC. Okay, so here without any introduction, this bank account is open. So the depositor continued to deposit and withdraw small amounts of money for some time and also deposited a check of rupees 65,000 drawn in his favor, which the bank collected. Right? The collected money was subsequently withdrawn. After a month or so, the bank receives a notice from one Mr. X stating that the check of rupees 65,000 was his property and was stolen by Mr. X. So these are two Mr. X, different persons with the same name, right? Now, this is deposited with the bank. He demands the money from the bank. Option A says that bank has not acted in good faith while collecting the check, as no introduction was obtained. B says bank account was operated by the account holder for some time, satisfactorily, due to which bank was not negligent. C says bank acted in good faith by allowing collection of check after some time, due to which bank is not liable. D says a bank can ignore the notice received till a court order is received. Debashri ji, yes, these are absolutely PPB questions from module A and B, typically B right now. So let's look at the correct answer here. You should just probably look at the introduction part of it as the KYC and imagine if the bank is not fulfilling the KYC, what will be the status? All of these problems can definitely arise. So now with the moment you see it as KYC, everything becomes clear, right? So correct answer is option A because if there was no introduction, then bank has not acted in good faith. So we've done 5 questions. Any particular doubt or anything? Okay, let's move forward. Now, this is a question from module A for all of you. And is related to Basel norms. So this says the market risk positions that are subject to capital charge requirement includes which of the following position under Basel III? Risk pertaining to interest rate related instruments in the trading book, risk pertaining to equities in the trading book, forex risk including open positions in precious metals, and all of the above as the last option. So for this, you need to understand what is market risk. So remember, market risk was the risk that was the fluctuation of prices, market movement. So the moment you have that, you will be able to zero down on the correct answer. Why? Because interest rate is also like a price. That is like the price of our loan or of our deposit. Then the next is equities, which is also prone to a price movement where your share prices change every day, every minute. Then the next is forex risk. Forex risk is foreign exchange risk, right? Now these options, they could have just been very simply written as interest rate, equity, foreign exchange. And the question would have looked simpler. Just because they've written statements, there can be a possible confusion in your mind. But do not get confused. Remember that all the three, forex, interest rate, and the market, are included in the market risk as a part of Basel III. So the correct answer here is all of the above. Let's go to the next question. This is again module B related to the check and the, how the banker customer relationship is established. So take a minute to read through this, then we'll discuss it. You need to practice reading also, longer texts, filtering out the relevant information from a question when you are reading. So it will save a lot of time if you're, quick to read. So let's read the question together, which is Navi Mumbai branch of corporate bank opened an account in the name of one Mr. Sham Babu after an introduction of a customer of the branch who deposited an order check of rupees 2 lakh in the account, which was issued in favor of Sham Lal after endorsing it as Sham Babu. So the first statement tells you there is some mismatch in the name, Sham Lal and Sham Babu. The bank collected the check in normal course and a major part of the amount of the check was withdrawn by the customer in 10 to 15 days. After this, what happens? A complaint is received from one Mr. Shamlal that the said check was stolen from his office by Sham Babu. He claims the amount from the bank. Okay. So now what is the situation that can be done? So the bank has collected the check by acting negligently as the name of the payee was wrong, hence liable. Paying bank is also negligent for having ignored the endorsement which was irregular. Paying bank is not liable as the negligence on the part of the collected check has caused this. And A and B above. So the idea in this particular question is that you should always read all the options. Never in excitement read the first option and indicate it as the correct one. So in this particular question, option A is right, but option B is also right. So when you have to mark an answer, it will be option D. Right? What is an endorsement of a check? So basically, endorsing will introduce a third party. Let's go to the next question. So module B question. Which of the following is true in case the notice is received by your branch that an insolvency petition has been filed against or by a customer? So the operation in the account should be stopped only when the customer is adjudicated as insolvent. Operation in the account should be stopped from date of notice of insolvency petition. Operation in the account should be stopped only when the official receive requests in writing, and none of this. So the idea here is to find out when should the account be stopped. So as I can see in the chat box, the correct answer is given yes, which is option A. Sorry, option B. Right? When we say adjudicated as insolvent, that means at the end of the case. But we should stop the operation immediately as soon as we get a notice that there is an insolvency petition filed. Right? That is the only difference that they wanted to check. So it's not the conclusion of the case, but the beginning of the case when the accounts operations will be stopped. Okay, now this is a question which will need some paper pen calculations from your end, and I would give you about 2 to 3 minutes to read the question to understand what is to be done, organize that pen paper, and then we'll start the discussion here. So some of you are already there in my batch, we've done a similar question. Please take it as a revision. And for everybody, I should highlight this, that a similar exact question for 2 marks has been there for last 3 papers that have been held. So not doing this question is definitely not a very good idea. So let's start this. So everybody is organized and everybody is trying to attempt it. So let's see how to approach such a question. Okay, so this says that an account showing outstanding amount of rupees 44 lakhs has been classified as D1 on 31st March 2015. The realizable value of security is rupees 20 lakhs. The amount that is covered under the CGTMSE is up to 75%, max up to 37.5 lakhs. What would be the provision as of 31st March 2017? So this is with the NPA provisioning from module B, the question, and an important one. Like I just told you, we have had similar questions in previous papers as well. So let's write down a couple of things as an information point here. So the question gives you information about that outstanding amount of the loan is 44 lakhs. The date is given 31st March 2015. and the category of an NPA is given, it is D1. So first of all, you will have to remember that for how long the asset stays in D1, D2. So quickly tell me. So for how long will the asset stay in D1? So D1, the asset will stay, if it is classified on 31st March 2015, it will stay for 1 year. So that means till 31st March 2016, the asset will be classified as D1. And then D2, from D1 to D2. If it starts D2 at 31st March 2016, what will be the time till when it will be in D2? The time period is 2 years. So that means from 2016 to 2018, the asset will be D2. Now the date which is given in the question for all of us is somewhere in the middle. It is 2017. So we have established that as on 31st March 2017, 30th March, sorry,